So look with me in verse 26 and 27. Paul says that there is a spiritual mystery which has been hidden for generations, but is now revealed to the church. This mystery, which has been kept both from God's people and the rest of the world, is Jesus. Now, what Paul is saying here might sound arrogant, and to many of us it actually sounds dangerous. Paul is saying that he knows truth, and that this truth has been hidden. See, isn't it true, if we're going to be talking about hardship, that people have used religious truth to persecute other people, to harm people, in some cases to even kill other people? If Paul is talking about this, how can we go on acknowledging that, knowing that that's true? I mean, isn't it better just to abandon all the ideas of a singular truth for humanity and just find our own way, find our own path? Isn't that the only way forward in a safe society? You see, that's not what Paul is saying here. Nowhere in this passage does Paul give Christians a license to be religious bullies. He isn't writing in a tone of fiery condemnation. Far from it, he is actually showing us how God chose to reconcile people through his word. See, the majority of the Bible is written to the Jewish community. But look at verse 28. To them, God chose to make known how great among the Gentiles are the riches of this glorious mystery. The Gentiles were not part of Israel. Far from it, there was often hate between the Israelites and the Gentiles at the time. But God chose to reveal Christ to humanity. It's not a truth that is supposed to be taken in by someone so they can take up arms against someone. It's a truth that is supposed to be made known. And God models reconciliation by giving this truth to both the Israelites and the Gentiles. So through this, Paul is saying that you can know about Jesus through the scripture, but he actually takes it a step further. Look with me in verse 27. He says, this mystery is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Think about those words for a second. Christ in you. See, what Paul is saying is that through the scriptures, we can go beyond knowing about Jesus. You can actually have a relationship with Jesus. Now, I want you to think about social media for a second. Excuse me while I get a drink of water. Both my wife and I have Facebook, and I can go to her profile and see all sorts of information about her. I can see pictures, I can see her age and all that. But just having that information does not constitute a relationship with her. Now, what would happen if my wife would start writing on my wall, trying to communicate directly with me? Well, then I would go from knowing things about my wife to actually being able to engage in a relationship with my wife. The difference is how that information is directed. My wife would go from just splattering information on the internet to saying, this is something specifically that I'm revealing to you. Okay. In much the same way, Jesus reveals who he is in Scripture to us. Jesus chooses the writers of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Paul, Peter, etc. He lets them tell us his story. And just how my wife posting on my wall is an active relationship, when Jesus reveals himself through the scripture, that's actually an active relationship for us. That's how we know who Jesus is. Just like the early church knew Jesus, we can know Jesus too. Now, unlike a relationship with a person, we don't have a physical Jesus here to have a relationship with. But through, and it does seem a little fantastical to say, okay, have a personal relationship with Jesus even though you've never seen him. You see, Jesus, even though he lived 2,000 years ago, he's currently ascended right now in heaven. Being God, he has the ability to have a relationship with us through his presence, even though we can't see him or talk to him, because we have his word and have his spirit with us. And some of us may be struggling with this idea. We say, okay, if I can have a relationship with God, and let's say I do this, I kind of know myself. I don't think I'm worthy of that. I can't hold up my end of this relationship. See, this is the great truth about the revelation of Jesus. It's not just Jesus was revealed so we can have a relationship with him. He also tells us how. See, on the cross, Jesus took away the punishment for our sin, the thing that was separating from us from God. He took that away for us. He took the punishment for our inability to hold our end of that relationship. So because of that, we as imperfect people can have a relationship with a perfect God.